Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Mentor Monday. Mentor Monday is your weekly microdose of encouragement, inspiration, and miracle grow on your potential as a coach. What we always love to do on these Mentor Mondays, we've always designed these around connection with you. So do us a huge favor, jump in on that chat widget right now, whether you're on YouTube or if you're on Instagram or if you're on Facebook. Go ahead and jump in the comments right now. Tell us your name. Tell us where you're joining us from. One thing that you're excited about, that you feel life and you feel momentum on. Just take 1 second and do that. Also, just a huge favor. If you have found us going live every week has been really helpful for you, you see some value in it, just a huge favor and hit that like button. Or you can also share it. Tells Facebook, YouTube, and even Instagram that we're doing a good job. So just a huge favor right now. Go ahead and say hello to us. Jump in the comments. Let us know who is in the room with us right now. And we're about to jump in. So in the last couple of weeks, I actually started this new series, which we are calling How to Get Out of Your Own Way. And really what we're talking about in this series in particular are the kinds of things that we do. We want something, we're moving forward in our life. We desire something so strongly, but somehow we actually create our own obstacles, like the obstacles that we are hitting, the barriers that we are hitting, the sabotage that we are experiencing is actually what we've created ourselves. And I think a lot of times we're not always really aware of some of these sinister kinds of things that we're actually doing to ourselves. And so this whole series is based on those kinds of things, the ways that we self-sabotage and the way that we create our own obstacles, and how we can actually effectively move ourselves out of the way to pursue the things that we say that we really want. Let me say hello to a couple of people who are saying hello to me. There's Kathleen. Welcome, Kathleen. There's my buddy Bart. Hey, me. Hey, out of the way. I love that. There's Robin joining us from the Bronx. Welcome, Robin. Mary Jane is joining us from Holland Landing, Ontario, Canada. Welcome. Hey, it's Eric from Jackson. I am going to be in Mississippi next week, actually. I will be flying to Mississippi next week to go and spend a couple of weeks with my mom, who's having a surgical procedure. So I'm actually looking forward to being back in the South for a couple of weeks. So maybe I will see you there, Eric. I don't know. So anyway, let's jump in, though, because I think in a lot of cases, we're not really aware of these kinds of things. And so really what I wanted to do is take a few weeks to grab some of the hot topics, some of the obstacles that I think that I've faced myself in starting a business, but also becoming a coach. And I believe that many of you are experiencing and running into some of those kinds of things. I have always loved to think and to dream for as long as I can imagine, that I can remember. And matter of fact, in the backyard of my house, I built this makeshift clubhouse. Actually, the first iteration of it actually came down in a storm. The second iteration of it, my brother got back there, and it was basically a bunch of pallets and with this A-frame roof on it. It was, rats like to hang out in it and everything else. And there was me, because I spent a lot of time by myself when I was growing up. And I would sit there and I would dream all the time. But honestly, I mean, there's very few outrageous dreams that I had, because I was living in this little town of 6,000 in the South. We had one traffic light. And so my dreams really weren't that big. But something happened as I got a little bit older. My dreams started getting a little bit bigger. They started actually, taking root in my heart and having some color. But the reality is that I was so risk averse and I was so terrified of failing and all of these other things that honestly, I would have all of these detailed laid plans, and I could bring you to journals. I could bring you to a lot of stacks of pages and different things that I've actually carried through the years, because I have journals going all the way back to about 1998 that I have available in my garage. And I could see the dreams and some of those things taking root back then, but almost none of them. Matter of fact, I would say that most of those dreams never happened because I never took action on them. I was great at thinking up things, but I was also just as good at utilizing my imagination to think about all of the worst possible things that could happen. And honestly, what I would do is I would have these thoughts, but then they would carry me. My imagination would always go to the deepest, darkest, scariest places where I am alone and I'm penniless or I fail or any number of things. And so reality is that I never actually acted on almost any of those things when I look back. A lot of great plans, a bunch of could be's, but it took me a lot of years before I started actually utilizing my mind for something besides just dreaming about the scary stuff, but to actually dream about, and actually, more importantly, not just dreaming, but taking some real decisive action towards the things that I really wanted in my life. Let me say hello to a couple of people really quick that I see in there. Awesome. I see there's Miramay. Welcome, Miramay. Let me just say hello really quick, and then we're going to jump in. So as I've thought about this, I run into a lot of coaches who suffer from the paralysis of analysis. It's when you're overthinking to such a degree that you're really not taking action. Matter of fact, there's some coaches or aspiring coaches who are doing a lot of activities, like reading about coaching, like watching videos about coaching, going through books, taking courses, and they don't realize that all of those things in many cases is a lot of overthinking. And they've got a lot of theory and they've got a lot of thoughts. And here's what usually happens when I get asked questions from those people. It's usually in the realm of theory. Like sometimes it's so hard to even answer their questions because they've sat around dreaming about all of these scenarios, but because they've never actually had an experience, it makes it really, really hard to answer some of their questions because we're only talking about theory. And a lot of the theory that they're coming up with is really scary situations where they're failing in some kind of way. And it's like, boy, honestly, it's a lot of work to use our imagination that 99% of it is focused on us failing. It's focused on the negatives. It's focused on the what ifs if I move forward. But what we're really trying to accomplish with all of the thinking, with all of the strategizing and everything else is that somehow we're trying to come to some degree of certainty. What everybody's really trying to do is that they're trying to grab a hold of their life in some way to make it as predictable as the life that they have right now. As much as we don't want the predictability of life, because honestly, everyone who is listening to me that has areas of your life where you are unsatisfied, it's because it's predictable. Matter of fact, it's so predictable that if I went back 90 days with you and I said, hey, on the week of July 26th, tell me what you're going to eat each day. Who are you going to hang out with? What car will you be driving? What street will you be driving on? Where are you going to be? Here's the interesting thing is that if we went back 90 days ago and I asked you those questions, you would live fully into that reality with about 98% certainty. You know how I know that? Because you're a powerful person. That's how. Is that the things that you think about and the things that you commit to and the choices that you make actually have results. And you're actually getting the results of the choices that you're making. And that's why your life is so predictable. But to go into a new place doesn't mean that I really have the luxury of predictability anymore. Because you want something new that's not predictable, but honestly, you're sitting around trying to make predictions and you're trying to create certainty in your life. And until you feel like you have it, it's very possible that you will never do it. Here's some reality checks that I stumbled upon when I was going through this myself. First of all, let me say this. The three most common areas of overthinking are really these three areas. Career opportunities, that's a really big one. Money management is a huge one that people have. And another one is just life-changing decisions. Why are these such big ones and keep people from being able to move forward and they're overthinking them? It's because most people are in scarcity. Most people are in survival mode about their life. And instead of thinking about things that could make them thrive, they're overthinking, they're exhausting their imagination, and that in a way that it actually keeps them in the life that they really don't want. Survival, which is really scarcity thinking, it's when we're in lack, makes us think that if we go after a career opportunity, that we might be more miserable than what we are right now with the existing career that we have. That's how bad our thinking is that instead of seeing this as something that could be really killer and could be extraordinary, we're looking at it as a possibility that could actually be worse than what I'm experiencing right now. So we don't take action. Scarcity thinking makes me think that if I spend money on something, if I invest in something, that somehow it's going to take food off of someone's table. Scarcity and lack thinking makes me not lean into the life that I could have, and it makes me continue tolerating the one that I have right now, because at least I know what to expect. And so the people who are in survival mode, the people who are in scarcity thinking, are living way below their potential, and they're having a fraction of the kind of life that they actually want to experience. They have a fraction of the contentment. They have a fraction of the hope really in life. Because here's the deal, is that the reason why we have scarcity thinking is that we actually have a lack of hope. Hope is an expectation of good. Worry and thinking about worst case scenarios all the time, and if that paints your imagination, you're kind of living in this place. Like this is how dangerous overthinking is that if it's leading you not to the places that you dream about and into a better life, but if it keeps you locked in because you think the other foot is going to drop, that is a dangerous future for you, because the only thing that you're thinking about is worrying about what's going wrong and having an expectation of bad happening rather than having a hope that the best is actually ahead. Let me tell you this, is that if you'll actually start taking action in your life of the things that you dream about, the best is ahead of you. The best life for you. I was telling a group of coaches this weekend, we had a boot camp, and we were talking about destiny and some of those things. We just had a little side discussion about it. And honestly, you don't really start coming into destiny and coming into fullness in your life until you hit about 40 or 50 years old. That's actually, you have to have a history in your life. You have to know more about yourself. It's actually, for those of you who are a little bit later in life that I'm talking to, I want you to know that the best is in front of you. Because we've got a culture that's taught us that age is something that you don't really want to have. Like you might, like you're not in the game anymore after you turn 30 years old if you're an NFL player. But we have cultures and we have a background of understanding on this planet. It wasn't that long ago that we understood that the older that you got, the wisdom is there, that you actually have a higher means of contribution to the world than you ever have in your life. We're only just now getting in our prime if we're reaching 50 years old. If we're reaching 60 years old, we're finally have a history enough that we can see where we've been, and we know enough. We have enough experience, failure, and all these other things that we can actually move forward. How can we have some reality checks really quickly? And I'm going to run through these really quickly because this isn't really probably what's going to help you ultimately, but you need to have some of the reality checks that I have. First of all, here's reality check number one, is that if it's not obvious yet, you can't control or predict the future. I know many of you have been in the business of sitting around and dreaming about the future and dreaming about every scenario that could possibly happen. But the reality is that none of you probably saw 2020 happening for any of you, did you? You probably didn't see 2007 happen for you. As a matter of fact, a lot of people have just felt like 2020 was just kind of like Groundhog Day, because they thought that 2020 was going to be like the better year than 2019, and it was completely unpredictable. Now, I guess if you did predict it, you could have made some major money and did some investments and everything else. But honestly, if you've ever noticed in your life that with all of your effort, you've never been able to control, you've never been able to predict the future. The next thing that I'll say is that no decision is perfect. So if you're sitting around thinking that you're going to make the perfect decision, that it's going to be ideal and it's going to be excellent, and if you can sit around thinking about it longer and longer, that you're finally going to find the perfect coaching program. You're going to find the perfect teacher. You're going to find the perfect house, the perfect street, the perfect school for your kids and everything else. Have you ever noticed that in any decision that you've ever made in your life, that pretty much you weren't hitting a 10 on every one of those things? There were some concessions. There were some, not just concessions, but you had to make some compromises some ways around there. There was never really the perfect job, or at least it seemed perfect for a little while, but you realize is that honestly, you've never made a perfect decision in your life. Here's another thing that I'll tell you, is that every decision, though not perfect, can and it will be modified and adapted. Every decision that you've made, even when it wasn't perfect, you figured out a way to make it work. Even if you bought the house that wasn't perfect, you found out a way to make it work. The job, the school, the drive to work, like all of these different things that you've had come up where you made a decision and it's like, man, this wasn't exactly what all the laid plans were. You know what? Every time you were resilient and you modified and adapted in that decision. I remember a couple of years ago, my wife's cousin was getting married. And so my wife and my kids went to Florida to be there for the wedding. And they'd been planning for months this picture perfect wedding on the beach in Florida. It was the wedding venue was where they were going to do the reception was right there. But everything that they had, everything for the entire day was planned to be on the beach. Very little, if almost nothing was planned to be inside the building. Everything was there with a picture perfect, like clouds and ocean and all of those other kinds of things that you want for your wedding pictures. Well, you know what happened? Torrential rain is what happened that day. Torrential rain did not ruin their wedding day. It might have ruined it for some of the wedding guests who were like, I've got my best clothes on. And they were like getting wet and going and hiding under things. Here's the craziest thing. Probably the best, most real, most joyful wedding pictures I've ever seen in my life was from that couple. Because you know what they did? They owned it. And they adapted in the moment. They literally ran out in the ocean. She's got her expensive wedding dress on. He's got this tux that I either bought or rented or something like that. And they were out in the middle of it. And they're the best. Like, they look like pictures that a couple is going to go shoot for Instagram or something like that. Like, except that these were real. And honestly, the things that happen in our life, there was this study by the University of Cincinnati years ago. And they discovered that about 85-90% of the things that we worry about never happen. And the 15% of things that actually do happen in our life, we're incredibly resilient and we know how to adapt and we know how to modify things to make it work. That's what's true. Another thing that's true is that taking action is always better. It's a million times better than sitting around and pondering it. And so how do we actually get out of the overthinking mode? How do we actually move? Because that's what I said. I don't know that reality check's really going to help you, because I think that we all kind of understand that. But how do we actually get out of this? How do we get out of overthinking that's turning into inaction in our life? Here's the first thing that I would say about that. The first thing that I would say to stop overthinking is that you've got to ask yourself what's most important. Most of the pain that I see in people's lives, most of the reasons why they are indecisive and they are stuck is that they really haven't figured out what are the most important things in life, what are the priorities in life. And to illustrate this, I want to show you this picture. And this popped back up on my Facebook just like a day or two ago. And I posted this obviously back in 2016, and I just captioned it with this. Is be grateful today, especially if you are living in the United States. And now I ask, what am I supposed to do with this unearned gift? God has given you power and freedom and made you one of the most influential people on the planet. What are you doing with it today? I don't know that this picture speaks as much to you as it does to me, because this is where my family is from. And when I see this picture of everything bombed out, and if somehow this dad who is in the moment, making the most of the moment that he is in, like, I couldn't imagine maybe the heartbreak, the scary, it's got to be scary. It's got to be uncertain and all of these other things. See, it hits me really hard when I look at that, because I think about my great-grandparents who immigrated to the United States. Now, this wasn't part of my history, because actually they got out of there before things started becoming their worst over there, thankfully. But I think about my great-grandparents, and I never had the opportunity to know them because they were quite older. And so my great-grandfather actually died a really long time ago, and my great-grandmother died in like the 60s. So about 10 years or so before I was born. When I look at this and I think of them, for as much as I know about them and the dreams that they had in their heart and everything else, two things were absolutely certain about that whole thing. One is that they could not have predicted the future, and they had no clue that this was what was coming. They had no idea probably that this was what was coming to their world. And they weren't like unsuccessful people where they were living. They just had a desire in their heart that there must be something better, and that we want to position our family to be able to succeed and to have more opportunities than we ever dreamed of having. Arabic speaking people who are going to come to the United States and all of this other stuff. But when I look at the picture, I'm not sitting around like, I'm not like all sad and all of these other kinds of things, like guilty or I don't feel any of those kinds of things. All I know is that things aren't perfect here. Like, I know things are not perfect in the United States. I had racist stuff that was sent to me last week. Poor people that, it's like, you that bored that you're going to send me racist stuff? Like, really? Like, completely missing the mark. But it's fine. Like, that doesn't bug me. What bugs me in my heart is that if I don't realize what I actually possess, and I don't know that I realized that for a really long time. Yeah, I understood that it's kind of like, hey, United States isn't perfect, but you know what? I have a voice, I have an opportunity, and I can make something if I'm willing to not buy into a story that some people have bought into, to realize that I have an opportunity right now to touch millions of lives that I don't know that my great-grandparents ever thought about me standing here. But I can't help but to think about the fact that if they hadn't made the decision that they did, then I might be in this picture. See, it's how important, when you know what's most important, then you make that decision, no matter how scary it is, no matter what the threats are or anything else. And when they made that decision, it wasn't an easy decision, not only coming to the United States, but also the fact that they came at a really bad time, like right before the Depression and all of these other kinds of things. And the fact that my grandfather was malnourished growing up and all of these other kinds of things, it would probably made them think sometimes, man, maybe this wasn't the right move. This is a little bit uncertain. This is not, except that they adapted their life and they figured it out. So when I look at things like this, I'm reminded every time of what is most important in my life. And there's no decision that I have made in my life that has even come close to the decision that they made. I owe it to them to live with boldness and courage. And let me say this for every one of you who are sitting here hearing my voice. Here's what's true, is that your DNA has been passed on and has survived all kinds of things in this world of threats and harm and days when probably an ancestor of yours didn't have any food and all kinds of different things, plagues, all kinds of stuff. You're standing here. And don't tell me that some decision like, oh, what's the worst thing that could happen to you? Because you might fail. The worst thing that could happen to you is somebody might reject you. The worst thing that could happen to you is you might lose your reputation a little bit because you failed or something like that. Like, these are the kinds of things that we're battling. Like, really, this is what we're up against in the United States. Like, really, I mean, we've got to have a perspective shift in this. And if we understand what is most important to us and live our life aligned with those things, is that I think that courage and boldness is actually required of you. I don't think that this is an optional kind of thing for you. I think that we've got to cut past all of the excuses, because this is what thinking and overthinking really is at the end of the day, is that we know that we can't control anything, that it's our best guess. But we have to know what's most important, and we've got to act in boldness and with courage, because that is truly what we're made for. That is what's on the other side. I'm so thankful that I have a heritage that I did, that there's boldness and there's courage, because it reminds me that I owe something on this planet. I'm not just here for a mistake, but I'm here. There's definitely there's a reason why I never had to think about where I was going to be born or anything else. Like, I can't take credit for any of those things. What I do need to do is I need to take responsibility and take ownership. It's true for every one of you. Yeah, we all have different stories and we all have different difficulties and struggles. And I had those when I was growing up and everything else. I can't take responsibility and ownership for what has happened to me. All I can do is take responsibility for how I react and what I build in spite of those kinds of things, because that's truly who we are. And so to get out of this overthinking, not only do we have to ask the question of what's most important, we also have to ask ourselves, what decision has to be made now? Like, what is the moral imperative of your life? What is critical? What must you do in your life? Because I think what a lot of people do in their life is that they're always living in the past or they're always living in the future. But the reality is that the only thing that you have right now is right now. You have the present. You don't have the past anymore. You can't predict the future because of the past. You have to forget. Sometimes you need to burn the past. Because I can't be looking in the rearview mirror or my future continues to look like my past. And sometimes we've got to make peace with those kinds of things. There's a moral imperative on your life right now. You're not getting any younger. We don't have any guarantees on our days. I have things in order right now, and I try to live a life so that when my head hits the pillow at night, if I died that night, I know I've done everything that I was responsible for and what I was supposed to do in that moment. But I am banking on living until I'm 100 years old. I really am. But every day we're kind of losing some of those moments. Like I want to live present future. I want to understand that today is the day. And you know what? Tomorrow gives me another breath and mercy wakes me up again to do it again if something didn't work out today. These are the kinds of things that we've got to get in touch with in our life because they're infinite, they're timeless, they're much bigger. I don't know. Like I want to live a life that has zero regrets. I don't know about you. I want to keep resolved relationships, and I'd have to say, I'm almost 47 years old, and I have zero unresolved relationships in my life. Why? Because I understand that I get today, and that might be it. And I'm not going to take a chance on regret for the rest of my life. I owe it to you because me living on the planet has something to do with your story right now. So I better get about living the life and be bold and courageous, or we would never be having a conversation even right now. Here's the next thing. You have to ask yourself then, what is the worst case scenario? Like, let's get real about it. What really is the worst case scenario? I'm not talking about dreaming about every possible thing that could happen, but what is the worst of the worst of the worst? And if you can actually get a picture of what that is, and you ask this question, can I live with a worst case scenario? That's all you need to know. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? And can I live with the worst thing that can happen? And if you think about it that way, most of you who are thinking about being aspiring coaches or starting a business or whatever, what's the worst thing that could happen to you? So you're not going to go broke. What, you're going to walk around with a certification that could be used in a business or to beef up your resume, or you're going to bring in a new skill and you're going to have better relationships? Like, tell me what's the worst. Like what we've tried to do as a school even is to take every excuse out of everybody's hands, that if you think that money is an excuse or is a real reason why you can't do something, then we take that excuse out of your hands because it's really not. It's a deeper question. And so if we actually look at the worst case scenario and I was like, hey, I can live with this. I can live with this. Now you've counted the cost. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we can actually act decisively in our life. Here's the next thing, is that you've got to set a deadline for your decision. One of the things that has been said, there's this thing called Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law states this, and I'm going to paraphrase it, I'm sure. But the longer time that you have to make a decision, the longer you will take. You know how long it takes to make a decision that's 4 hours away? 4 hours. You know how long it takes to make a decision that is due tomorrow? The next 24 hours. That's it. You know how long it takes to make a decision that is 2 weeks away? Like the deadline is like what? August 15th? That's how long it's going to take. That is Parkinson's law in and of itself, is that the longer you give yourself, the longer you're going to take. Yes, there cannot be certainty. Yes, there is not going to be a perfect decision. You know what that means? It means that what I have to do is I have to draw a line in the sand and say, this is when I'm going to decide. It has to be decided. Yes, you will probably, for some of you, only get to about 50 or 60% certainty. And that has to be okay, because it's the only way that you're going to break yourself out of inaction. It's the only way that we're going to stop this thing. Those are all 6 points that I hope that you captured. And here's what my heart is that I really want you to think deeply about your life. That we are more than just working a job. We are more than just a husband or a wife or a parent or anything else. That there's much bigger stakes. And I want you to feel your humanness. Like, I want you to get in touch with the brevity of life and everything else. I want you to get in touch with the fact that you are here to make a difference, to make a dent in this planet. And what that means is that you've got to be courageous and bold to actually go after these kinds of things. Like, yeah, I don't want today to just be like, I don't want anybody to think this is guilt or shame. Like, it's none of those things. And I also don't want you just sitting there borrowing off an inspiring story to be like, oh, that makes me feel good. No, like, you know how you would actually like delight my heart or something, is that whether it's coaching or I don't care, like, go to another program, go to a Tony Robbins program, just do something today. Okay. Like, that's what we're talking about, is that we understand these things. It's got to actually put us in motion. Even if it is one small decisive decision, is better than sitting around thinking about it all the time. Like, the decision to actually move forward just needs to be decisive. It doesn't mean that you're dropping $30,000 on something or you're moving to Africa necessarily. What we're talking about is one decisive moment today where you make some kind of a choice that you know is moving you forward towards something that requires boldness, something that requires courage inside of you. That's what I'm talking about. Let me pay the bills, and then I'm going to answer any questions that anybody has tonight. For those of you who have been thinking about getting trained and certified as a coach, what we have done as a school, now we pioneered an online education years ago, and we've become the largest life coach training program in North America. But we've done that not simply because we want to train and certify coaches. That's only one dimension of it. And that's the dimension that most schools actually live in. And that's as far as they go, is to give people a piece of paper that says that they're certified, and then they send them out and they wave at them from the street or something like that. And that's not okay with us. We want to go further. What we have tried to do is not only train and certify you to give you coaching proficiency, but we want to see you thrive in your life, and we want to see you thrive in your practice. And so everything that we always try to do is, a lot of times it's going after the belief systems, the mindsets, the obstacles, all of those things. We really try to go after those things for our coaches. But at the same time, we try to give you simple tools and make the process as non-convoluted and as easy as it possibly can. Like, we want to take all of your inward and external objections away from you so that you can actually start this life today. Our Jumpstart program is a subscription-based program. Now, most coach training schools will actually charge you thousands of dollars just to get trained and certified. Let me show you what you actually get in this program. Yes, you do get trained and certified because we do give you your training, your certification. Also, when you get your certificate, you're able to actually pull your credential into LinkedIn. We literally host it for you, so you can pull it into your website, share it across social media, all of those things. We give you a free listing on lifecoachmatch.com. That's $75 a year. Normally, you get it for free. It's our online coaching directory. We also do a live weekend boot camp that builds upon everything that you learn in the Life Coach training course. And this is stuff, it is expanded training. You spend the weekend, it's live, there's Q&As, it's fun, there's role playing. There's all of those things that are actually happening in one of those weekends. And we do this about every 2 months. That's actually included in the program. It's normally $247 itself. You get it included in the program. We also have Brand Camp. It's about 10 hours of training on how do you develop your marketing messaging, how do you optimize your website, color schemes, like literally everything. How do you write an email? We cover all of those things in Brand Camp. That alone would be worth thousands of dollars. We know that. You're getting it as part of this program. Also, we give you about a 30 video business development roadmap. It's an A to Z on how do you start your business from scratch and develop a six-figure coaching practice, whether you're going to be a traditional coach, a hybrid coach, which is traditional and online, or a fully online coach. We cover all the bases on those things to give you a real strategy. And what we do to supplement that is, this is every Wednesday I go live with the students who are part of that program, and I answer any questions that we have live to make sure that we cover the bases on all of your learning. We give you feedback on anything that you're working on. There's also an online community where you can connect with other people who are inside the program. All of this, $97 a month with a 3-month minimum commitment. Every one of these things are included. There's also monthly specialty topics. Next month's topic is going to be on growing your Instagram account, just specifically targeted towards coaches. And so we're always developing these things because we're trying to You know what we're trying to do? We're trying to get every objection, even the financial objection and everything out of the way so that you can just focus on building your business. And you can do all of this stuff even if you're still working full time. Highly encourage you. There's a link inside the description where you can get more information and you can actually get enrolled today. And your enrollment only takes about 90 seconds and then you can start. Let me say hello to a few people who are in here. There's Sandy, who is joining us from Dallas. Welcome, Sandy. Anita, who's joining us from Minnesota. Welcome, Anita. Xavier in San Diego. Xavier sent me a picture of him eating a Cali burrito. There is this place that's my favorite Cali burrito, and I had no idea, Xavier, that you'd never had one before, but I was so delighted and happy that you did. There's Dustin from Georgia. Welcome, Dustin. Let's see, who else do I need to say hello? Eric's telling me that it's hot and humid in Mississippi, where I'm headed in the next week or so. I am prepared, I think, but at least you guys all have AC there. Nobody has AC in California for whatever reason. Anybody else would like to say hello before we head out for the day? I want to thank you again for spending your Monday night with me. There's Stephanie, who's also from San Diego. Welcome, Stephanie. Anybody else would like to say hi, or you have any questions or you have any thoughts that you would like to share before we head out? Well, I am going to assume that is it then. Oh, Dustin says, I didn't show my appreciation for the coffee cup you had during the training this weekend. You know what? It's literally still sitting here. And I didn't realize that I had it turned around. So I'll have to look back at those videos. This was a gift from my daughter that says, coffee makes me poop. So I did not even think about that. Like I literally held that through in an entire session. And it's so funny that nobody actually said anything to me about it. But you know what? Now you know. A little bit more insight, a little bit more vulnerability and getting real. But as I said to our group this weekend, I have 3 daughters and they all love like potty humor. It's like their favorite, that's what that is unfortunately the effect, maybe one of the most profound effects that I've had on my children is their sense of humor, be that good or bad. Awesome. Let's see. There was a question. Where did it go? I saw something about boot camp. When's your next boot camp for marketing? We don't have one slated for a live one. If you enroll in Jumpstart, you already have it. It'll be in your student dashboard, like immediately available. So everything that I talked about, you have access to immediately. Boot camp, brand camp, all of those things are actually available in there. Eric says, thanks, Ro, good word. Thank you. Rachel says, I love it too. I laughed a lot. That's so funny. And you guys didn't actually say anything to me about it. I can't believe that. Xavier says, massive value is always blowing the doors off. Thanks again. Thank you. I appreciate that. Andrea says, thank you for providing the courses you do. The free classes help me decide how to move forward in my life. You rock. Thank you. I appreciate that. Awesome. Bart said, your comment on it doesn't have to be perfect to move forward. Hit me in the feels. Okay. Awesome. Very good, everyone. Well, listen, I appreciate you guys all immensely. Have a great rest of your week. Make sure you like this post, share it, make sure you comment. And also, if you haven't gotten started yet, click that link and at least get if you're doing some informational thinking about things, go ahead and click that link and spend some time there. If you have any questions for our staff, just hit us an email or a text and we'll get back to you. Appreciate you immensely. Have a great rest of your week and take care.